Hi, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. Today is April 3rd, 2014 for This Week in Free Energy. And you can go online to freeenergynews.com for our daily news. And also for This Week in Free Energy, it's thisweekinfreeenergy.com. Today, we had an interview with Fix the World organization, Hope Girl and James Robotali and his wife Valerie from Taiwan. I was able to interview them. It went very well. Working on getting some images associated with that upload, and then we'll be putting it up. So you can be looking for that shortly. Also, there's a lot to talk about there. We'll kind of leave that interview. Don't want to I guess, spoil the story too much, but they've been working really hard. They've had a lot of downloads of their plans of the QEG, Quantum Energy Generator, originally developed largely by Timothy Thrapp of World Improvement Through the Spirit Ministries, WITS, W-I-T-T-S, and they basically kind of took it the next step, got it working, and of course, Timothy Thrapp appears to have gotten it working as well. People have not been able to replicate it from the plans that he makes available, and James was able to do that with his background in radio and electronics, and kind of has the right bag of tricks in his experience bag to pull a rabbit out of the hat, so to speak. And they're now training a group of about 30 people in Taiwan how to make these. They've got some people who came in from China, a great sacrifice to do that as well. And so we look for great things from them. Make sure if you are involved in open sourcing there and involved in that project, that you give adequate donations to Timothy Thrapp for the work that he's done in helping bring this forward, as well as Fix the World organization. Moving on, actually, one other thing I'd like to say about that, just by way of overview, is this is not to the point right now where you can download the plans, build one, and power your house with it. They're still in the research and development stage. They're hoping that within 6 months, with the speed at which things are moving right now, that they will have worked through optimization and getting this thing to the point where it could be manufactured on that level. We'll cross our fingers and hope they can pull that off. They and you, whoever's involved in that project, will be featuring those developments as well on our PESWiki website. Also, yesterday we featured a new company that we found out of Ukraine. Sorry, that's a bit of a tongue twister. I actually did an interview with them this morning as well. Had a translator and talked to the inventor, Nikolai. And they showed a really convincing video. Actually had it uploaded around February 21st. I didn't find out about it till yesterday. Had two independent people bring it to my attention, and looks fascinating. It's a QMogen, self-loop motor generator system, which is also the genre that the QEG is as well. You've got a smaller motor generator. Maybe QEG is a bit of a stretch on that one. It's not really a QEG. It's got some other stuff going on there. But this YMNEE, Y-M-N-E-E, out of Ukraine is definitely a QMogen. It's probably the most simple layout we've seen. They did about 400 watt load, showed the motor and the generator sitting on the floor. They moved it so you could see that there weren't any hidden wires underneath it. There was one wire, I guess, behind the power source that they should have moved just to rule that one out. The skeptics are always going to find something that wasn't done properly, that they didn't rule everything out. They first plugged it into the mains, turned it on, and once it was up to speed, they unplugged it from mains, and it was self-looped, producing 400 watts. It was powering 16 25 watt bulbs, and they supposedly are ready to go into production. We talked about that this morning in our interview. That doesn't mean that they're actually, unfortunate in my opinion, are going to be targeting the kind of power company level, 1 megawatt or above sizes, even though their video was a low watt level. Supposedly they didn't say this because they're basically trying to low-key what they've got, but supposedly that they've had these things running in power plants for some time. I actually take that back. I think I misinterpreted. We had an interpreter involved, and I may not have heard that one correctly. But they are supposedly ready to manufacture a 1 megawatt system, and they wouldn't be contacting manufacturers if they didn't have a production prototype. They understand the drill on that. At least they seem to. And so they're basically looking for customers and licensees to roll this thing out. They're a bit squeamish right now about having people come in and see a working prototype, which is, I'm scratching my head as to how are finance people and customers going to be putting down checks if you don't have third-party testing, a prototype you can come see. So I didn't quite understand what they have, what they can show that would be convincing enough for people to sign contracts and whatnot. They do have working prototypes, supposedly, but they really didn't go into detail explaining what somebody would be able to see or review as evidence before signing contracts. Moving on to other things. By the way, I should also mention they claim that they can scale this thing from microwatts to terawatts. I grin on that one because reminds me a bit of Kesh. He's a visionary for the future, and his thinking's several years ahead of where things are at right now. At least it seems that way. They may surprise us yet. I finished my calorimetry. I did a report on this last week. I already talked about that. It took me quite a while to get all those reports written up. I shouldn't say all those reports, all the items involved in the report. If you printed it out, it's probably 25 pages of material. I've got 11 videos, 3 of them were live. I think we had 12 hours of video altogether live while we were running the experiment, and then I shot 8 other videos just kind of showing different pieces, showing how we were taking the measurements, giving a little overview to my kids when they showed up, kind of a simplified explanation of what we had there, and pulled together the data, put it in a spreadsheet, did some charts. A big, I guess, boo-boo that people said that we did on this experiment was the fluke clamp-on ammeter that we were using was, as you look at the readout, there were several settings, for ohms, resistance, volts, amps. There are 2 settings for amps, one in the microamp level and then one for up to 10 amps, and then it could go up higher than that on the clamp-on. And there was a yellow button that you could click, and it had like 4 different options. And we had it, the proper leads were hooked up properly. And as you would toggle that, the other readings were like 0.11. There were a couple in that range, and then one was like 12 point something, and that was in the range that we were looking for. And so we figured that even though the readout on the display was saying AC, and we were measuring DC, we figured, well, it's 12 point whatever it was, and that's what we're expecting to be in that range. So we went ahead and used it, figured that, that looks right, and it was moving up and down as we would expect in terms of like, as you look at our data, we had two major issues in the course of the 8-some hours that we were running the experiment. From 4:48 p.m. to midnight is when I pulled the plug on it and started the cool down testing, just to see how well we had insulated it. But during that 8 hours, I had we had two leads going to the power supply, and Frank I didn't watch how he was setting it up. He just basically wrapped it around, put some duct tape on it, and that wasn't really a good connection. As we found out, one of the leads just fell off, and so we put it back on, put a clamp on it, and then the amperage went up, as you would expect, because it was a tighter connection. And then around 8:30 or so, the negative lead, the positive one went off first, and then the positive lead started smoking. It was getting hot because it wasn't a good connection, and the amperage reading I'd done just before that was like 10.6, and so it was a very weak connection. So I took that off, turned it off for a second, put it back on, put a clamp on that one, these big, almost, heavy clamps about this size, put that back on there, and that got a really strong connection, and now the amperage is reading 14.5 something amps. And then also it rose for a little bit and then leveled out, which is what you would expect as the electrolyzers warming back up or coming back up to temp. Not that it would have cooled down a whole lot in just a couple of minutes that we had the thing turned off to reconnect and get that going again. But the reason I bring that up is because the amperage settings were within the range and were moving as we would expect. And so I don't think we were reading an artifact or some AC thing in the power supply, which was one person was saying was going on, and you could just throw out all your measurements because you weren't measuring what you were seeing. But there's a calibration point, because if we take the volts times the amps that we measured, before we started the experiment, we did a bubbler test, or we did a test of the rate of flow of gas. We took the tube and we put it into a bucket of water, took a 2-liter bottle where we had a 2-liter mark marked off with a pen. It was full of water, turned it upside down into the water, took our hand off, or a bottle cap, I'm not sure how Frank was doing it. And so the bottle was full upside down, took the hose into the bottom of the bottle and let it fill up with gas. And when the gas got to the 2-liter mark, that was 2 liters, and we would stop the clock, so to speak, and we would have a time that it took to fill up 2 liters, and then we can convert that to liters per minute. And we had measured that we'd gotten 0.87 liters per minute at that point, using 10.6 volts, and I think it was 10 point something amps. And so what we did is we gave those numbers to Steve D, who's the one who gave us sold us the electrolyzer we were using, the 31 plate. He's over there with greenfuelh2o.com, and he's got an algorithm that he can run based on Faraday's numbers. And so we give him the volts, we give him the amps, and he says, based on those numbers, the algorithm says that you'd be producing 0.7 to 0.75 liters a minute, which is, within 15-20% of where we were at and what we had measured, 8 liters or 0.87 liters a minute. And so the calibration was fairly close. I consider that like a calibration point. And so it actually argues in favor of the, we doing all the crunching, all the numbers, that last set when we had both of the clamps on the leads, and we had a steady, an even flow of amps for about, I think it was 3.5 hours. and we had a temperature difference, I think, of 3.5 Celsius. So we had a change in temperature, we had the time, we had the watts, the amps, we had all the numbers we needed to be able to measure the joules that were being put into the water and the joules that were being put into the DC, through DC into the HHO generator. And so the input to output rate efficiency was 77%. That's not that great, but there's some things that argue in favor of that being a good number. Something doesn't have to be, quote, over unity to be harnessing the will work of nature. Over unity is an obvious harnessing of the will work of nature because you're getting more than 100% of the energy that you put in out on the back end. But if you're using an electrolyzer, go to Wikipedia or other sources online and you'll see that the expected efficiency on the high end for an electrolyzer, these are according to numbers like Faraday and whatnot, the actual achieved efficiency is 70%. And we got 77%. And then that's just one of the factors in the setup. The second setup is the electrolysis, where you're taking the not the electrolysis, the catalysis from HHO gas back into water in the catalytic converter, which is nominally a fuel cell type of setup. And if you look at the fuel cell numbers, the highest efficiency they can get there is 85%. And so you take those two numbers, 85 times 70, and you get 60%. So on the high end, what you could expect from conventional science in our setup would be 60%. We got 77%. And it turns out what I was saying earlier with the calibration that we did on this would actually argue in favor that our numbers were conservative, so that we actually got higher than 77%. And so, in my opinion, I think in my write-up I made a strong case that we show that there's anomalous heat. Heat's coming from somewhere other than just the catalytic process. There may be some LENR or tritium, something's going on in the catalytic converter producing more heat than what you would expect from conventional science. There's something unexpected going on, cold fusion, whatever it is, it's worth pursuing. Given the questions that people raised on the reading being in AC when we were measuring DC, even though I gave all the 6 different reasons why I believe that even though that's the case, we could still accept our data as having been legitimate. I know from my dad working for National Institute of Standards and Technology in Boulder of the atomic clock, he was able to get data from the most unusual places by running unusual permutations on things where he could, I remember like 6 or 7 different stories as I was growing up of things that he would do that were, for example, with it used to be the GPS signal was blocked so that they would have a military version that was more accurate than the civilian version that was used for aircraft and other things way in the early days. And he had a way of just by number crunching that he could actually eliminate the military blocks so that the civilians could get the same level of accuracy that the military had. And he was giving this paper at a scientific conference, and he had some people from the DOD in the audience, and they were just grinning, just like, what do you expect? I mean, people are going to figure out workarounds. And so that's what I was raised with. I mean, you can't argue that I don't know what metrology is about. I don't have the same training or experience that my dad has, but I know what metrology is. And I know that you can work around with things and get things from unexpected sources. And so think outside the box. There are other ways of doing things than just, you don't have to go to the doctor to get your prescription or to get your diagnosis of what's wrong with you. You can look at the symptoms, go to the internet, look things up, say, hey, there's a really great herb for this, and try it out. Not going to hurt you. Be your own doctor kind of thing. And so, be your own scientist. You don't have to follow the prescriptions. If your fluke meter is saying AC and you're reading DC and it's in the right ballpark, it's a fluke. Maybe that's why they call it a fluke meter. I don't want to denigrate them, but they're a very highly revered name in the industry. But there are always workaround things going on. There's always more than one way to do something. So anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and do the experiment again, and we'll do some more things to make all the skeptics happy, and get some really solid measurements, and do duplicate on everything. 2 amp meters, 2 volt meters, two thermometers, stirring the water with a mixer. I mean, just getting everything. We were stirring the water before we took our measurements, but maybe not as much as some people wanted. So even though we would stir for like 30 seconds before we took the reading, obviously you're going to have differences in the top and the bottom if you don't have it completely stirred up. But the problem is if you have a stir in there, that's going to be generating heat. So, you know, if we're measuring, if we're stirring it by hand right before we take the measurement for 60 seconds, you know, that's not going to be contributing heat to the system, not enough to be measurable, so to speak. So anyway, Frank's did quite a bit of work. Frank, sorry for the background noise there. Frank Crowther, whose house we were doing this at, he's here in Ephraim, just 5 minute drive from here, just down the road. He put some fins. You got the catalytic converter, you got the matrix inside of it, and he took some aluminum pieces of metal, cut a little hole in the middle, folded them down, slid them over, and so he's got about 12 of these fins on this body, and he's got a little fan put in front of it, so we can start measuring, you know, just basically without the water bath, because the water bath is going to really pull the heat out. And you know, people who've been playing with this stuff and getting a lot of heat out, you know, well, it's getting up to 300, 400 degrees external on the heat exchanger, and that's getting up to, inside it's like 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. And so maybe the really good stuff, the sweet spot, we want to get up into the higher temperatures. And so with the setup that Frank's got, we'll be able to get into a certain range. With the fins on there, it's going to keep it from getting a lot hotter, because that's going to kind of limit it to the room temperature. And it may even have the same effect as the water bath on it in terms of quenching the really exciting stuff. So we may take those off and may even try running the air through it rather than across it. So you've got your catalytic converter going this way, and blowing air across it this way with the fins. Take the fins off and actually put the airflow in line. So you've got your brown gas coming in, going through the catalytic converter with a little maybe computer fan blowing that. You can turn it on, turn it off, and get the orientation of the gas so it's shooting in the direction of the catalytic converter. And so you're actually, you know, catalytic converters are designed to take NOx out, to reduce it. So you've got air, you've got high temperatures, you've got the gases coming in, you're going to have NOx. And the catalytic converter is designed to remove that. And so you're creating it with the air, and you're going to remove it with the catalytic converter. Hopefully, I mean, that's the thinking on it. And that way you can actually just take some regular plumbing, 4-inch plumbing on this side. It actually tapers down to 2-inch on this side, the way they build it for us. They made a custom one for us over at thunderboltperformance.com. And it's a metal matrix. It's a little more permeable. It's got 300 cells per inch rather than 400, which is in the ceramics. Corning makes those. And Corning actually has a guy, I learned today, who is willing to help us out, and you know, we can talk to him. I need to call them, but I got the referral from somebody who called me today on that. Anyway, we can take this air flowing across it, and we can, you know, pump it up, pump it down, or increase it, decrease it, and see what we get. Just actually have the air blowing across the catalytic converter. You got your temperature probe here before, temperature probe after. Now we don't even have to worry about pulling the heat off the outside. Just blow the air through the catalytic converter, take the temperature on the back end. Then you can really get up into some of the higher temperatures. That was Mike Waters came up with that idea this morning in our NEST meeting. So we may give that a try. Frank Crowley's got to go build a house in a few days, and so he's not going to be available. We've got a professor of chemistry at Snow College is interested in what we're doing. We may be able to get some students involved, maybe get maybe some lab space that we can go tinker around with over there. So it's a bit in flux right now, but we should be able to get some more measurements before Frank has to go build his house. Bless his heart. He's sure not slowing down at his age. Moving on, sorry I've taken a lot of time with that. Wanted to talk about this. One of the guys, Peter Bannister, posted a video with his HCAT set up. He was getting a really loud resonance sound. You could hear it humming, an audible hum. Boo! You know, there's some kind of resonance going on with his catalytic converter. Don't know what was going on with that, but that's kind of interesting. In other news, Jeremiah Sturck has come up with a magnet motor. He's been working on this for several years. He's been communicating with me over the years. He's had a few false starts on some demonstrations. He's invited me to Mount Shasta on June 20th through 23rd to see, he's covering my expenses, to come see a demo of his magnet motor. He says, what you will see, you have never seen before. All I can tell you is that the propulsion systems have been running a long time. The rest will be a surprise. So, I asked him, I said, look, you know, you've had a couple of times in the past where you thought you were going to have a demonstration that didn't materialize. Could I at least get some kind of a video, even privately, to see before I, you know, ship my... He's going to pay expense for me to take my family, drive up there. It's maybe an 8-hour, 10-hour drive from here. And before we take that time to make that trip, could I just see a video of this thing running? And he's going to work on that. He's maybe in a couple weeks or so send me something. You would think he's already got something he could send me, but you never know with these inventors. They get kind of eccentric. Excellent article written by an associate. It's called Shh, New Energy Breakthrough is Quietly Powering Up. It's over for a magazine. I'm sorry I don't have that written down here, which magazine. Within a few short years, we could see an energy explosion that changes everything. It promises to come years to decades sooner than conventional hot nuclear fusion, and it could be a lot cheaper, more scalable, and more transformative. He talks mainly about the cold fusion things that are going on with Andrew Rossi, Defcalion, Brillouin, and the HCAT. He mentions our site in there and gives a couple of the images that we have on our HCAT project. Mats Lewin over at NY Technic in Sweden, they're kind of their Scientific American in Sweden, highbrow scientific magazine, has written a book. I met him when over at the Bologna demonstration of the ECAT in October 28, 2011, when Andrew Rossi demonstrated his 1 megawatt system running at half power for 5 hours. He's a really good scientist. He knows his math. He was running the numbers. He was also the one that Defcalion chose when they did their demonstration at ICCF 18 last year at University of Missouri. That's the International Cold Fusion Conference. They did a live demonstration, and he was there taking the measurements in that live video feed. So his book is called An Impossible Invention. Kind of the ECAT story in specifically, as well as cold fusion in general. He started a blog also. I signed up for it, where he's going to be talking about other exotic free energy technologies too. And then another article, Long Overdue Return to Ether. Reading Malov in Korea and others, William Lyon to an extent, put me over the top on total rejection of Einstein's relativity theories, this guy writes. For April Fool's this year, I had hoped to have my, I posted a few photos that I've been collecting over the year that would be good April Fool's photos. They were kind of fun. Most of them were from a Facebook page showing anti-gravity type of photos. They were basically just taking the picture at the right time, so you have this anti-gravity sensation of looking at it. But also on the first was when I ended up finishing my write-up on the HCAT. So I asked people not to go there with the whole April Fool's thing, because that just when I happened to finish it. A little bit off topic. I published a statement today. If you don't build your dream, someone else will help you, will hire you to build theirs. And now that we're coming to a transition time in the world of exotic free energy technology with a lot of opportunities, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to do some really cool stuff. Start companies, do service calls for people who have these technologies installed, do licensing, manufacturing, engineering, marketing, auxiliary products. So there's really no time to. This is not a time to stand on the sidelines. So, there are some people in the audience here who are getting a buzz that you need to do something that you're already not doing. Get off your butt and do it. Rise up, awake, put on strength, put on your beautiful garments, it says in Isaiah. Everyone on the planet has a mission in life, something to do. That's wonderful. And we need to wake up from our stupor and our sleepness and step into our godhood. We are all sons and daughters of God. Jesus said, "What manner of men are you to be, even as I am? Greater things than these shall you do also." And so we have a great destiny. And I hope that those of you who have just been sitting on the sidelines watching might think about actually getting involved, because things are getting really exciting. There's a lot of stuff breaking out right now. So while evil is getting the upper hand, it seems, from the mainstream everything, goodness is coming up as well. And there's this, this battle between the two. And if you just sit back on the sidelines, you're going to be overtaken by the evil. But if you step into the goodness, then you can be part of the winning team that pulls us into a better world. Along those lines, I also posted a story today. The evidence is that Michelle Obama, Barack Obama's wife, is a transvestite man. Evidence includes index fingers. A man's index fingers, if you look at my hand, the ring finger is taller than the index finger. The females, it's the other way around. Their ring finger is shorter than the index finger. And hers, of course, is like a man. I should say his. The shoulder muscles, she's got really, Michelle has really strong shoulder muscles right here. She's got an Adam's apple. The surgery, you can get rid of some of that, but not all of it. There's some pictures where you can see the Adam's apple. She's got biceps and triceps that are consistent with a man, not a woman. Eyebrow features, basically it's shaved off, and then there's just an eyebrow, a feminine eyebrow that's allowed to go in and be painted. But you can see that the eyebrow function or outline is of a man. Shoulder width being larger, wider than the hip for a man, not a woman. That's what she's got. The head height, the proportion between the head height and the body height for a man is 8:1. For a woman is 7:1. And Michelle Obama is 8:1, like a man. The head width is for a man, his shoulders are basically a head width this way and the head width this way, whereas a woman is 2.5 head widths between her shoulders. And Michelle has 3 head widths, like a man. Genitalia, there's some pictures where you can actually see, you know, it's embarrassing to look at, but her dress is pushing up against her genital area, and it's not female. So, also, Newsweek magazine, in 2000, I can't remember what year it was, but on the cover they had Barack Obama with this rainbow halo, and it said, "The first gay president." That was, you know, and they were making it look like he's God or something, because he's got this halo thing going on. Like, you know, that's something really cool. And so here you have a gay president with a transgender wife running the country, and I also put a reference to that Janet Napolitano is also transgender. She's not a female. She was a man. In high school was voted the most likely to be a transgender, to have a sex change. She's running Department of Homeland Security, the TSA. They're filling up and groping us as we go through the airports. No wonder. We are being ruled by a bunch of very wicked people. And it's time that you wake up and smell the coffee, so to speak, and do something about this. We've got to get that man out of office. He needs to be removed. There's so many things where he's breached the Constitution. He was not born in the United States. There are so many things that make him an unsuitable person to be in office. He's got to be out of there, and we've got to wake up. So if you're not already awake, you know, you look at the facts and wake up, smell the coffee. So that's all I have for this week in Free Energy. Sorry to end on that note, but you know, we got to take a stand. People get on my case for bringing up this kind of stuff in free energy. What does it have to do with free energy? Well, this conspiracy covers all aspects. Just as goodness crosses all aspects as well. And this battle covers a lot of different fronts. And if we just stick to free energy and don't worry about these other battles out here, then we're going to lose our freedom. And if we lose our freedom, and if this country goes to pot, where are you going to be able to buy your equipment? And you're not going to be able to just pick up the phone and order something from Taiwan or China or wherever it is and get it in a week. It's going to be months, because our infrastructure will be shot. If you don't stand up and make a difference, we're going to hit the wall as a civilization, because these guys want to destroy civilization as we know it. They want to turn us all into slaves so we can just barely work to stay alive and keep them fat and happy. And they have no compunction against, you know, putting the chemtrails out, poisoning the land. These are evil, wicked people who are ruining this planet right now. We've got to stand up and make a difference. So that's why I bring this kind of stuff up, because it's not just freedom or free energy that we're talking about. We're talking about freedom. Because free energy is all about freedom. When you've got free energy, you are empowered. And that's why they don't want to breathe these things out. And that's why you've had these suppression stories all these years. And so stand up for freedom, stand up for free energy, and make a difference. You know, even if your mission in life is not to get involved in free energy directly, you need to support it as part of what you're doing, and step into your mission, whatever it is, and get off your butts. Let's win this war. Thank you. The QEG, Quantum Energy Generator, originally developed largely by Timothy Thrapp of World Improvement Through the Spirit Ministries, WITS, W-I-T-T-S, and they basically kind of took it the next step, got it working, and you know, of course, Timothy Thrapp appears to have gotten it working as well. People have not been able to replicate it from the plans that he makes available, and James was able to do that with his background in radio and electronics, and kind of has the right bag of tricks in his experience bag to pull a rabbit out of the hat, so to speak. And they're now training a group of about 30 people in Taiwan how to make these. They've got some people who came in from China, a great sacrifice to do that as well. And so we look for great things from them. Make sure if you are involved in open sourcing there and involved in that project, that you give watt load. Showed the motor and the generator sitting on the floor. They moved it so you could see that there weren't any hidden wires underneath it. There was one wire, I guess, behind the power source that they should have moved just to rule that one out too. It's the skeptics are always going to find something that wasn't done properly, that they didn't rule everything out. They first plugged it into the mains, turned it on, and once it was up to speed, they unplugged it from mains, and it was self-looped, producing 400 watts. It was powering 16 25-watt bulbs, and they supposedly are ready to go into production. We talked about that this morning in our interview. That doesn't mean that they're actually, unfortunate in my opinion, are going to be targeting the kind of power company level, 1 megawatt or above. Hi, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. Today is April 3rd, 2014 for This Week in Free Energy. And you can go online to freeenergynews.com for our daily news. And also for This Week in Free Energy, it's thisweekinfreeenergy.com. Today, we had an interview with Fix the World organization, Hope Girl and James Robotali and his wife Valerie from Taiwan. I was able to interview them. It went very well. Working on getting some images associated with that upload, and then we'll be putting it up. So you can be looking for that shortly. Also, they a lot to talk about there. We'll kind of leave that interview. Don't want to, I guess, spoil the story too much. But they've been working really hard. They've had a lot of downloads of their plans, adequate donations to Timothy Thrapp for the work that he's done in helping bring this forward, as well as Fix the World organization. Moving on, actually, one other thing I'd like to say about that, just by way of overview, is this is not to the point right now where you can download the plans, build one, and power your house with it. They're still in the research and development stage. They're hoping that within 6 months, with the speed at which things are moving right now, that they will have worked through optimization and getting this thing to the point where it could be manufactured on that level. We'll cross our fingers and hope they can pull that off. They and you, whoever's involved in that project, will be featuring those developments as well on our PESWiki website. Also, yesterday we featured a new company that we found out of Ukraine. Sorry, that's a bit of a tongue twister. I actually did an interview with them this morning as well. Had a translator and talked to the inventor, Nikolai. And they showed a really convincing video. Actually had it uploaded around February 21st. I didn't find out about it till yesterday. Had 2 independent people bring it to my attention, and it looks fascinating. It's a QMogen, self-loop motor generator system, which is also the genre that the QEG is as well. You've got a smaller motor generator. Maybe QEG is a bit of a stretch on that one. It's not really a QEG. It's got some other stuff going on there. But this YMNEE, YMNEE, out of Ukraine is definitely a QMogen. It's probably the most simple layout we've seen. They did about 400